it's a little bit difficult for me to believe you were a Wall Street guy, or you were a Wall Street guy.
Yeah, I was a Wall Street guy. It's funny. The other day on my Instagram, at Real Joe De Sena, my social media guy said, "Hey, listen, right now Bitcoin is going through the roof. People are crazy about it. Can you just do a little post about Bitcoin?" So I put a post out there, and I saw a couple of comments were negative, like, "Who the hell are you to talk about Bitcoin? You're a race director. That would be like whatever." And I thought, gee, actually, for 15 years, I owned a firm on Wall Street.
To be on the Better Than Peter podcast.
Thank you. I just want everybody to know. I don't know if you do video and audio, but if anybody's watching this, I have a hat on and a sweatshirt. One, I always wear a sweatshirt, but two is it's pretty cold here in Boston, and my family, they want me to stay on brand. They don't want me to ruin the reputation of the family business. So I think they turned the heat off, and they made sure that I can't sneak in a hot shower. So I just got out of the shower, ice cold, no heat in the house. I'm surprised I got a bird in the corner, is not dead because it's so cold in here. But anyway, if you see my breath, then you know what kind of operation my family's running.
Even if it's -10 or -20, would you still have a cold bath?
You got to do it. Our philosophy at Spartan, and by the way, we didn't invent this philosophy. This is 2,500 plus years old. The Spartans invented this, right? And the Stoics back in ancient Greece is the hard stuff. When you do the hard things, when you approach life and embrace the difficult, you're actually healthier, you're happier, you live longer, you're more fun to be around, you look better. So like, I think we look at magazines, let's say the covers in magazines, and we see these beautiful people, but yet we don't do the things, we don't live a life that makes us beautiful, right? We've been taught in school. I'm sorry, I'm very passionate about, so I might just keep talking. So
That's fine. I think you're allowed that, considering when we come to the passionate part, people will understand how passionate you really are. Sorry, continue.
really passionate about this. People don't live the life that makes you feel and look like that movie star, that person on the cover of the magazine, right? We've been taught from a very young age to like come up with business ideas that make life easier, that make us softer. And those things aren't necessarily better for us. Like if you and I were having this conversation in a horse and carriage 125 years ago, I would say we need couches, we need hot water, we need cups of coffee, we need all those things, right? Donuts, because life was hard, and people died young, and we couldn't even figure out why people were dying. But like the pendulum has swung so far the other way, we've made life so friggin' simple that it's unhealthy.
I'm guessing that you're not a big fan of technology or the mobile phone,
I'm
based
not
on
a,
what you're saying.
not a fan at all. I catch myself on it. The number one thing, guys, listen up, ladies, men. The number one motivator for our species, for a human being, is the avoidance of discomfort. That is the number one thing that drives our decisions every day, our actions every day, is the avoidance of discomfort. Obviously, we chase food. Obviously, we chase sex. But number one is the avoidance of discomfort. And that's kept us alive on the planet for, let's call it, 1,000,000 years. We don't fall off cliffs. We don't freeze to death in the rain. We haven't killed off our species because we're avoiding uncomfortable, dangerous situations. And this is legacy hardware and software that we needed when life was hard, when tigers were on the prowl, when we were just walking outside of our cave, right? But we don't necessarily need that anymore. We don't
So
need it. And
So just a bit of context, Joe, because I think we jumped in, and I know you from based on listening to you for various podcasts, but just for a bit of context for people who may not know about yourself, or first of all, what is Spartan, your company, which you're the founder and CEO of, and obviously whatever you said is it gets entailed in the Spartan lifestyle, but it's a little bit of what I would read into, or how I would describe to a layman as CrossFit meets outdoor training meets Navy SEAL. But I think you'll do a little bit more justice in the way how you would describe Spartan.
Well, just the word Spartan, right? It's a human being's indifference to comfort or discomfort. If you're just completely indifferent and you're just happy no matter what is coming at you, that's what the word means. And no matter where I've lived, anywhere in the country, no matter where I've traveled, everybody from China, Vietnam, Mexico, Chile, Canada, everybody knows Spartan. Everybody wants to be a Spartan. Everybody wants a Spartan existence. Spartan, we put on races. I make you uncomfortable. I have you crawl under barbed wire, climb over walls, jump over fire, climb ropes, do all the stuff that you don't do in normal life, but you should. And by doing that, by convincing you, which is a very hard thing to do, by convincing you to sign up for one of these events, what I did secretly was I got you to live a Spartan life leading up to that event. You start going to bed early, you start waking up early, you start drinking water instead of maybe sugary drinks and alcohol, putting down the cookie, training, and because you're afraid. You're afraid you got this Spartan event coming up. You don't want to get hurt. You don't want to look silly in front of your friends. You want to finish it, right?
You made it sound very simple when you started. It's racing. It's a bunch of races, 3 miles, 5 miles, but it's obstacle courses. And prior to Spartan, and correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't exist anymore, was something called the death race. Is that correct?
Yes, the death race. But before I tell everybody about the death race and Spartan, I want to go back to this idea of legacy hardware and software and waking
Sure.
up in the morning because
Hmm.
everybody listening wants to look like that guy or that girl on the cover of a magazine. But for some reason, you're not doing the work. I'm going to tell you the reason. You wake up in the morning, you want to go for that run, you want to do those push ups, you want to do those crunches. You find yourself looking at your phone. You find yourself going to the refrigerator. You find yourself doing anything but what you were supposed to be doing. And the reason is your brain subconsciously is saying, avoid the discomfort of the crunches, avoid the discomfort of the push ups. And you don't even know it's happening. And so if you don't get anything else from this podcast, what you have to get from it is be aware that when your brain does that, it's doing it based on old hardware and software. You don't need that anymore. Slap yourself in the face and say, hang on a second. I woke up to do my crunches. I didn't wake up to look at my phone and read the news. I didn't wake up to go to the refrigerator. I didn't wake up to do this or that. Get your work done. Once you recognize your brain is tricking you, you will have a much more productive life. All right, now let's get into Spartan. So, Spartan, I call it the Spartan paradox. You know, a lot of people say to me, Joe, I'd love to do one someday, but I got to get in shape first. I don't know if I could run 8 miles or 3 miles or whatever distance they would. Joe, I got to start eating healthy. I'm a little too overweight. Once I lose some weight, then I would consider signing up. You're wrong. Actually, once you sign up, then you start eating healthy. Then you start training because when you wake up in the morning and you remember 60 days from now, I got that event, my friends are going to be there, my family's going to be there, I'm going to look like an idiot. Then you start to stick to your goals. Then you slap yourself in the face and say, wait a minute, I don't want to read my email. I want to do my crunches. So I know it sounds self-serving. I know it sounds like I'm trying to sell you something. That's not the case.
Discomfort and being uncomfortable. So I've heard and I've listened to a lot of your stuff, Joe. So I do know what your take is on sugar, what your take is on fast food, and I know how passionate you are about even taking it up with the government. But my question is from a person who, let's say, works out 5 days a week or 6 times a week, is pretty healthy for the most part, but has that cheat meal. Has he or she blown it, in your opinion, or is it in their mind a reward for putting in the work for 6 days? Because this is where I feel your, at least philosophy from the outside, is maybe a little bit at odds at from what a lot of other people train at, where they reward themselves periodically based on the hard work that they put in.
All right, first off, I got a friend of mine. I got a bunch of friends first of all, my mother was into this stuff in the 1970s. All right, before people were talking about plant-based diets or ice cold showers or yoga or meditation or anything that's cool and hip right now, my mother was pushing in the 1970s. So cheat meals and vegan and keto and old news. 40 years been bouncing around. Here's what I would say: every time you put something in your mouth regarding food and drink, it's a life and death decision. It's a life and death decision. It doesn't appear to be so because we don't die immediately, but we're slowly dying. We're like the frog that's being boiled and we don't notice it. So, of course, you could have cheat meals. One cheat meal a week is better than every meal being terrible, but it's not optimal.
Yeah.
It's not optimal. Optimal would be raw fruits and vegetables, grass-fed meat if you're a meat eater, fresh fish if you're a fish eater, but more plant-based, less ultra-processed, and less cheating. We all cheat. I cheated 2 days ago. I was with the kids. We went to a wrestling tournament. The kids wanted to go to a pizza place. I don't eat pizza. I was sitting there. I said, all right, I'll get a big Greek salad. I had my Greek salad, but I wanted something. I'm watching them all eat pizza. I don't even eat much meat, but I said I want a meatball. So the meatball was my cheat. I paid the price. I felt terrible for the next day, but I had 4 minutes of pleasure eating that meatball.
Knowing you, I think you probably did 400 burpees after the meatball as penance. So I think I'm going to segue to this burpee thing because I watched a few videos and you've said that if you just do one exercise, do a burpee. And you took it to the extreme. I think when we talk about normal people doing different sets, they'll do a set of 10 or 20 or 30, and that's a pretty decent workout. But why burpee in your opinion? And do you still hold that stance? Because this might have been a slightly older video, but tell us about the insane number of burpees you end up doing in a 2-day span.
So here's the deal. The human body, I used to clean swimming pools when I was a kid. And a typical swimming pool is about 20,000 gallons of water. It's big, a lot of volume. The human body is very much like a swimming pool. It's mostly water, but it's about 8 to 13 gallons of water. So much smaller swimming pool. Swimming pool has pumps and filters. Human body has pump, heart, and filters. Now, I used to have 700 swimming pools I cleaned. So I know a lot about swimming pools. And I know that if you shut the pump off, the water turns green. So that's like not doing exercise. And I know if you don't clean the filters, the water turns green. And I know that if I took French fries and coffee and meatballs and ice cream and all the stuff that you're suggesting we cheat with, I know you're not suggesting it, but it's the reality.
I'm having water in my coffee mug, I promise, Joe.
The water turns green. Nice. So my deal is, you got to keep your swimming pool clean. You can't expect this little 13-gallon swimming pool with a tiny little pump and some filters to be able to process out all the garbage we breathe in, we eat, the lack of exercise. And so the burpee is like the shock. When you do a burpee, unlike going for a run or doing a yoga class, the burpee shakes the whole friggin' pool up and gets everything clean. It sucks. It's hard to breathe. Your heart is pumping. Blood is circulating. But you got to clean your pool. And there's not many exercises that attack every nook and cranny of the swimming pool, your body, like the burpee does.
How many burpees did you end up doing in a 2 or 3 day period when your company set you up on that insane challenge? Was it somewhere in the vicinity of 10,000?
Yeah, too many.
10,000 burpees. Just to give context to that, I think if anybody does 100 burpees, they're probably in amazing Spartan shape. This man ended up doing, because of a challenge, a competition, 10,000 burpees over a period of 2 days. Surely that must have been insane. I think talking about insanity, there was a person who showed up at your branch in Vermont, or he attended one of your races and you called him up to come over. I'm talking about the kettlebell. I'm talking about Leo. I'm talking about the story where this person weighs over 600 pounds and you transform his life. Take us through a little bit about his story and how you became part of the journey by basically taking the weight he's leaving. So just talk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, so basically, someone had reached out. We had a guy do a race that was extremely obese. I heard about him. They said he's 696 pounds. And somehow he ended up at one of our races. And what normally takes an hour took him 8 hours. And so I said, I want to talk to him. And I called him up and I said, look, I'd love to help you lose weight. Come to the farm in Vermont, our headquarters, and see if you can get off work. I'll take you for as long as you want. I've got a protocol that'll get you down in weight. And somehow his employer said, okay, and he showed up. I took his wallet, I took his car keys, and he became locked down on the farm. He was a prisoner.
He was under COVID rules.
He was under COVID rules before COVID.
Before COVID, correct.
I locked him down, and I said, here's the deal. Your diet is now only raw fruits and vegetables. There's no meats, there's no cheeses, there's no ice cream, there's no sugar. It's not nothing cooked. You could have as many salads as you want. You could eat 400 stalks of celery. You could eat apples till you never want to see another apple. Doesn't matter. But nothing cooked, no meats, no cheese, no desserts. Just got to be a raw fruit or a vegetable. If it doesn't fit raw fruit or vegetable, you can't have it. And we're going to walk 10 miles a day. As you lose weight, I said, I will gain weight. I'll carry weight on my shoulder as you lose 100 pounds, I'll carry 100 pounds. So we did it. We did it. I got up to 100 pounds I was carrying around, 100-pound sandbag. And beyond that, it just became ridiculous. It was hard to walk around 10 miles a day carrying a 100-pound sandbag. So I did this for a while. I eventually got him down to 262 pounds, 262.
So almost from 700 pounds to 262 pounds in the space of what, a year?
I would say 18 months.
18 months.
It took him to lose the weight. And ultimately did a big Spartan race with us, was able to go home and sit in an airplane for the first time in a long time in one seat rather than two seats. It was very emotional. It was amazing. And then from there, I started carrying around weight. I started carrying a kettlebell because I wanted to stick to my promise to him to carry around weight.
Did you make a lifelong promise to him? Because surely, I mean, if I understand for the 18 months you did it, but you seem to have taken it to heart, and you seem to still carry the kettlebell with you till this day. I mean, we'll come to that, but did you realize that once he left Vermont, you could probably lose the weight as well?
Yeah, I could have, but I just started thinking, you know what? When I walk around, if I carry some weight, that's like free working out. Like I lived in Asia for a while, like you're in Asia right now, and I had to do a lot of flying around. And you know, if you land in Malaysia in an airport and you got to walk over 2 terminals and I'm carrying a kettlebell, I'm like, this is a free workout. I could never complain again and say I didn't have time to work out. I'm just working out as I live. But it's very challenging because a lot of the airlines lose the kettlebells. I got to track them down.
So what you named the kettlebell Leo, and the kettlebell is 20 kgs, which you carry around with you wherever you go. And you do this till this very day, apart from the fact that the odd airline loses the kettlebell and then you go and buy another one. But you still, as much as possible, carry a 20 kg, 44-pound kettlebell with you wherever you go. Is this correct?
But if I'm going to the gym, I might not bring it because I'm going to work out anyway.
Right.
But typically, if I'm traveling, it's coming, and I just haven't traveled a bunch.
And when you take your kettlebell and you go to the check-in counter and the attendant behind looks at the kettlebell, surely she must think she's missing something, or you're missing something, or one of you is nuts, because I don't think there are too many people walking around carrying a 20-pound kettlebell expecting them to ride with them in the airplane.
It gets even better. It's gotten to the point when I check them in, and it's gotten really interesting because now the flight check-in counters, some of them know me,
I
and they'll
bet.
say,
I don't think there'll be too many people carrying around kettlebells, Joe. I'm pretty sure you might be just one of two people around the world.
my buddy reached out to me first time I got an email like this ever or a text just the other day, and he said, Joe, I have to travel with a kettlebell. This is like 3 days ago. Can you give me the protocol?
And has there been a time where an airline has not allowed you to carry the kettlebell with you?
Yes. There have been many times where I'm rushed to get on a plane and I've rolled the dice to carry it on, and they have taken the kettlebell from me. Um, I had in India, when I travel in India with the kettlebell, they typically put it in someone else's suitcase and ask me to find that suitcase when I get off the plane at baggage claim, which is a bizarre request. In the Middle East, when I fly with the kettlebell, they give me, I forget the saying, but something to the effect of, it's up to God whether or not it will be at the
I
other end,
can I can tell you the saying. It goes by Inshallah.
inshallah.
Yeah.
Um, and then, and
If
then,
it's God's will, it'll show up at your destination.
and then in China, no problem. I can carry it on the plane. No issue at all throughout China. Um, yeah, those are the big outstanding. In Sparta, Greece, they actually gave me an ancient kettlebell. They actually awarded me. The mayor of Sparta awarded me an ancient kettlebell of stone, which was awesome.
Actually, there is another brand which I did not know till recently was acquired by Spartan, which is Tough Mudder. And I know Tough Mudder, or at least I heard about Tough Mudder when I was in Dubai. And when one of my colleagues signed up for it, and that was the first I heard of it, I actually thought, again, a person who doesn't seek too much discomfort, so you have to excuse me here. So when they told me what the shtick was about, where it's an obstacle course, it's through mud, they'll be doing different, they'll be jumping on things, and it'll be challenging themselves. And I think it was 20 kilometers, if I'm not mistaken. I thought they'd lost it a little bit, or and then I researched it a bit more, and it was a pretty substantial turnout in Dubai, and I believe they've had subsequent competitions since. But you acquired the brand Tough Mudder, which was, I believe, your direct competition.
Yeah, that was our main competitor. We would battle it out all over the world. So exciting to own that brand right now, and exciting to see the world open up. It's a slightly different. It's a different audience. It's a much more professional audience. Comes out and does Tough Mudder. They typically sign up in large teams all around the world. Where Spartan's a little more of a competitive brand, a little more sport, if you will. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see.
But you'll still keep them distinct. There will be still Tough Mudders, and they'll still be Spartan. And to your point, I think Spartan's a little bit more for the person who's more than just a recreational athlete, and perhaps Tough Mudder could be somebody who might be a bit of a weekend warrior and looking to challenge themselves.
That's exactly right. We're keeping it completely separate. We kept the old team. They're running Tough Mudder. They won't let me do any of the marketing because
You'll probably throw some barbed wire. You'll definitely make it tougher. So if I'm anybody incorporated in Tough Mudder, I definitely don't want you around. But Joe, another thing which struck me was before you got into the fitness space and after your pool cleaning entrepreneurship gig, you were at Wall Street. And it seems like I can't see the connection now, obviously, but um, did, did you like your time there? You seem to have made some money or a ton of money, but it seems like a very different Joe DeSena who worked at Wall Street. And if you didn't do it, you wouldn't be where you are, or had that experience made you realize that health is actually wealth, or it's a little bit difficult for me to believe you were a Wall Street guy, or you were a Wall Street guy.
Yeah, I was a Wall Street guy. You know, it's funny. The other day on my Instagram, at Real Joe DeSena, my social media guy said, "Hey, listen, right now Bitcoin is going through the roof. People are crazy about it. Can you just do a little post about Bitcoin?" So I put a post out there, and I saw a couple of comments were negative, like, "Who the hell are you to talk about Bitcoin? You're a race director. That would be like whatever." And I thought, gee, actually, for 15 years, I owned a firm on Wall Street. The numbers.
What time period are we talking about now?
Well, I ran from the mid 90s to 2010 was my time physically, or day in and day out doing Wall Street. But I've stayed in touch with my top customers and friends and folks that, again, the largest traders in the world, the largest hedge funds in the world. Um, they were all my buddies from that time there. But while I was there, to answer your question more succinctly, while I was there, I quickly pivoted and started to take on some of my mom's teachings and say, look, I don't want to just sit here and make money and drink and do dinners and get fat and feel unhealthy. I want to treat myself like an Olympian. Rather than go drinking with customers and colleagues, let's go do yoga. Rather than having big dinners over and over, let's go run the stairs. Let's do an adventure race. And so I ended up doing all this stuff, and that became my branding. People just knew that, unlike everybody else on Wall Street, Joe was that crazy person that would make you run in the park for 12 miles at 5 a.m. And so I started Spartan while I was still there. I was playing around with this idea that people need a date on the calendar. Harder is better for you. But I was also very focused on making money. I needed to make money. If I funded Spartan for 15 years, I lost money. There's not a lot of business owners or founders that lose money and don't bring in outside capital for 15 years. So anyway, that's my story.
Would you be in Spartan in the physical fitness space 20 years from now?
People say all the time, Joe, what's your exit strategy?
No, I didn't ask that question because I know that word doesn't exist in your, or you have a different way of putting it. I'm just saying, would you still be running Spartan, or will you be taking a bit of a back seat?
I guess if I find a person that's very on brand, that could run this thing, sure. I would love to spend time with my kids, but um, there's not a lot of people that think about the world the way, like every other brand and service is about making your life easier. Maybe the armed forces, the Marines, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, they get it. So maybe I could hire somebody from the military to run this thing, but yeah, it's a tough brand to understand.
You probably want to keep going as long as you can. So, Joe, I really, really like to thank you for being on the Better Than Peter podcast. You have your own podcast. You have your own Instagram. The Instagram is The Real Joe DeSena, and the company Instagram is Spartan. And you have the Spartan Up podcast, if I'm correct. And I greatly appreciate you being on the show. I'll think a little bit more when I'm biting on my next pizza, which may be a couple of weeks away.
You're absolutely awesome. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure.
I'm glad somebody wants to talk to me.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe.